15 days. We didn't know how good we had it until 15 days ago. My next guest, Pastor Dr. Reverend Bishop, Overseer Darryl Sims, called me about 2 months ago, 3 months ago, and said, I am compiling a book that gives an interfaith perspective of the legacy of Barack Obama. Is that I want people of faith, so that history is not lost, to speak to his prophetic witness and his deposit in the earth realm. This new book called Mr. President speaks to leaders of faith from around the country who all, in fact, wrote chapters to talk about that legacy. Would you warmly welcome the editor and compiler of this book, Darryl Sims? Honored to have you, sir.
Glad to be here, sir.
I was... A few weeks ago, I was with you at the National Press Club for the unveiling and for the releasing of this book, and I was in awe that you were able to pull this book together in such a quick period of time. What is the focus and what is the point of this book?
The focus of the book is simply to help us chronicle the reality of how blessed we were and still are to have President Barack Obama as part of our history.
Yes. I was perusing it. You've got people like Vashti McKenzie, Jim Forbes, Jim Wallace, all people, Delman Coates out of Maryland, all people who readily said that we want to make an insertion. What was one of the most powerful reflections you read? How did it have an impact on you?
Well, one of the most impressive pieces with Dr. Otis Moss, Jr. He wrote, President Barack Obama and his wife and family exemplified what family values are, to the point where his detractors stopped talking about family values, because where they exercise it in theory,
wow,
he exercised it in practice.
Wow, that's heavy.
Yes. And another powerful piece that stands out in my mind right now is by a local pastor by the name of Wendell Anthony. He wrote, forever the perspective of young men and women will be changed in terms of how they view themselves. Because now we don't have to look to the past for history, but history is right here and now.
Yes.
Yeah.
And speaking of it, in the middle of Black History Month, why is it so important that every church and every young person is armed with this book, Mr. President?
Two reasons stand out. One, white supremacy is not real. It is only something that we have in our minds. It's important to understand your potentiality and also the prophetic reality of who you are as it relates to God.
Wow.
And when you start to think about who God is and we made in his image, there's nothing God has ever made that was not by his design.
Wow. In pulling this together, how did it impact you personally?
I must confess to you,
yes,
it helped me in one way. It was so stressful, I lost about 20 pounds. But it helped me in another way, because every now and then you need to be reminded of why you're here. You are blessed to find your purpose, but you are supernaturally blessed when your purpose knocks on the door and says, come.
Yes.
And that's how I felt about this piece right here. It introduced me to a lot of people around the world. It's such a diverse makeup of people in the book. Jim Winkler, David Beckman. I mean, it's people from all over the place. Cynthia Hale.
Wow.
I mean, it's just unbelievable
yes,
what we were able to do. And I thank God, and I also thank Barbara Williams Skinner, who worked with me to compile the book. So it has changed my life. It even changed my perspective of myself. Because when you get to the point where you may not know, you're right. It's just not the 19-year-old. It might be the 29 or 39-year-old. And we need to be reminded of just simply who we are and whose we are.
Yes. I am just amazed. You said something before we went live on the air, that it was important for you to write this book so that real history is not lost.
Yes.
We are now under a president who is intentional to wipe away the legacy of Barack Obama. And so how does the church and these faith leaders hold up the standard of the legacy of his memory?
We hold up the standard by simply talking about him, by creating classes to say this is how you too can be of a positive nature to society,
yes,
by being intentional and contributing to society. you have to be reminded sometime of where you've been to understand where you're trying to go. So churches, and not only churches, parachurch organizations need to be intentional in helping people understand that they're more than what they are experiencing.
You've been traveling literally all over the country, and what has been the most shocking response of people that you've interacted with who picked up the book?
Well, I'll tell you, when I go into barbershops, when I go into churches, people are always saying, and I thank God for this, thank you. Because you said it properly when you said we don't know what we have until it's gone.
Right.
So whereas many of us or some of us may criticize or may even say what he did not do, we don't really always understand the political system and how it's always about negotiating.
Yes.
But that book will show you the things that he did that we know not of.
Wow.
Monies being given to countries of poverty, systems being put in place to make sure there's always something coming to the next generation.
Yes.
How he dealt with hunger, how he dealt with poverty. There are things in the book that will remind us of things that were even going on behind the scenes. One of the sections in the book that I found most amazing are behind the scenes, where people like Cynthia Hale, Reverend George Holmes, talk about having prayed with the president behind closed doors and the fights that he was dealing with that we know not of.
Yes.
One of my chief editors, and I hope I'm able to say this, when he read the book, he's a Caucasian brother, and when he read the book, he said, I had no idea the vicious attacks were going on like this. We hear, we read, we even been privileged to see some of the things on television, but there were fights that went on behind closed doors we know not of.
Yes.
And one of the beautiful things about the reflections that we were able to compile was how he dealt with them.
Yes.
His temperament.
Yes.
How he handled things.
One of the things that was disclosed upon his exit is President Obama received 5,000 death threats a day. Had to have more security detail than any president in recorded history, but still was able to keep his countenance and not break down in the face of opposition. One thing that I hope happens from this book is that the ministers and the faith leaders that you've had write will in this season speak, because we really need to hear the voice of prophetic utterances in the face of so much corruption and a war against the poor, war against women, war against young black men, war against education. And so I'm hoping that what we read will now be able to come to life. What do you think is the state of the prophetic ministry in America now?
What is at stake now is authenticity. My father in the ministry, Dr. Charles Edward Booth, would tell all of his preachers, the most important thing that can accompany whatever anointing God may have on you is authenticity. And the black church, the black preacher has always had a voice. Stop and think about it. 9/11, they called on the black preacher. And no disrespect, Bill Clinton got in trouble, called on the black preacher. It's something about the unique experiences of the black male and female preacher that allow her to have an ear of God like nobody else. And when you are authentic in who you are, it is imperative for you to open your mouth and not worry about where monies may be coming from in terms of the government, but be prepared to live by tithes and offerings.
I love it. I need you, please, to get this book. You can order it on Amazon.com. We want this in the hand of every person. Again, have you not seen the common denominator dealing with potential and really awakening to who you are and your responsibility in the earth realm? Dr. Sims, I'm grateful for your sharing on tonight. I want you to get this book. And those of you that are watching, I need you to call right now, 855-730-WORD. 855-730-WORD. Can I tell you, man fails, but God never fails. Marshall Sam.